in DC where people were talking about the same issue. This is taking place in every urban center across the nation. And if you look at Detroit, you know, people are saying, oh yes, it's so terrible. What's going to happen is they're going to resell, they're going to repackage, and they're going to be reselling Motown. Because in fact, right now, you can, they're giving certain people houses for free. And you just got to renovate. You know, and the fact of the matter is this is happening everywhere in the country, every urban center. And the thing is that, you know, I don't necessarily think, I think that gentrification is a state of mind. Because like in Washington, D.C., you have a situation where they were building condos and they're putting tanning salons. Remember we had this conversation? They're putting tanning salons in in these condos. You know, and black businesses who have been here for years, they were saying, look, your music, you're going to have to, they're challenging the liquor like your music is just keeping us waiting. Yeah, but why are you moving to an area where there's nightlife, you know? So this is happening all over the nation. And I think what we have to do is, let's not operate in our silos, but we need to be talking to brothers and sisters in other areas that are going through this.
Yes, so I'm from California, and it is very different. The housing, the way in which people get from place to place, you know, it's just different. The culture is different. And I'm glad that I came because I've had to find a place here. And when I got here, I experienced some of the most intense real estate discrimination that I've ever. It's not that difficult in California. Like you have to make 2.5 times the rent. Here you got to make 40 times the rent to get an appointment to look at it. You know, but I also am hearing something else. A community that is decaying, that is trying to cope with ills like drug dealing and you know, businesses that are failing and slumlords and real estate and, you know, being out here, you know, mice and things, you know, it's not like that in California, you know. So I wonder, is there a way that the policy could be restructured, you know, so that it supports the people that live in the community, that fixes up the buildings, that fixes up the parks, because I would rather live in a place where my kids can go to the park and walk through the parks freely. I don't want it to just be everybody's black and we just deal with it as it is. I'd rather be in a progressive community, whatever that is and whatever that looks like. Now, I don't think that people coming in and taking the community from the people that live there is the answer. In fact, it makes me upset, you know, to think that this is the situation. This is what the business solution is, you know. However, I wonder, you know, from a policy lens, you know, what are there incentives for people who live in the community to live in the community, to stay here, but also to benefit in a like financially, so that they can gentrify their own community to a certain extent, you know.
Well, it kind of piggybacks off what she said earlier, where Rangel and those who are in political power did not or don't have someone they trained to take on the next step. At the same time, there are things that Rangel has done for his own benefit that had nothing to do with the community that he serves. I think the other thing that we need to also take a look at is who's actually serving the community. It goes across the board. It's not just economic. It also has to do with those who claim volunteer. I look at conversations, you speak to kids, I look at Harlem Children's Zone.
Right.
It's really hard to tell what they're actually doing in terms of empowering our youth. Majority of the time, most of their staff is untrained to work with kids. Every day, wherever you live, and there's a Harlem Children's Zone site, you hear them yelling, "Go home! That's it, go home!" You know, there's no, "I'll see you tomorrow." You know, they keep them in a closed space. There's no real exploration for these kids to understand who they are and the power that they have and what they can achieve. So when you bring that up, it's hard to find. At the same time, it's also on us. We do have a responsibility to go to these organizations. We are the power to say, what are you doing? You know, Jeffrey, Canada, really cleaned up in terms of nonprofit and how to make money. When I saw him on an American Express card commercial, I knew that he was at the end of the day full of shit.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, I remember seeing and I'm sorry, I remember seeing this, and it reminds me of a middle school that I went to a little bit. I read the article about him while I was working at my middle school. My middle school was an independent school on 129th Street in Harlem that was founded by this white guy who was a hippie. He founded the school in the 60s, but anywho. The model, I mean, there's certain kinds of institutions that want to corporatize like Black life and Black children, right? And you know, training. I mean, the school. Like I remember looking at like some of the mission of the school. It was like, you know, we're going to train them on how to deal with money, and they're going to wear suits, and they're going to, you know what I mean?
My favorite thing about it is the fact that he always says, you know, we're with the kid from the beginning of this grade until they graduate college. And, you know, there's a site in the National Black Theater that they have, and then there's the school that's around the corner down on 125th and Madison. Every day, consistently, cops were at the school, after school. Something was happening. The site that we have now, I don't know if you've been to the National Black Theater, but if you go in this place, this is pretty much a conversation of legacy empowerment. These kids walk in, first thing we hear is every curse word that you would get hit to say or that has been invented. And nigger is just in every other word of a sentence. Pants hang, the jailhouse mentality is now just a permanent trend. So seeing underwear was just something that you got used to. Even saying something, pull your pants up. What's the point of having a belt? Okay, great. I say that to say, we're the ones who at this point have the power. We cannot rely on anyone else in power with a title, which is also the worst part. These people have a title and position. Therefore, they're left to being right. Nobody questions them. We have given away all our responsibilities in saying that, yeah, you do it because I know you got my back here for the community. And it's not true. We have to take to task their job as serving the community. And it's upon us to really do that. You know.
Okay, I'm going to come to the lady and you can
Can I just have an answer? Oh, well, I'll get her
and
and then I'll
right. Okay,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, just piggybacking off of what he said about power. I just feel like there is an underlying message between the whole topic of gentrification. I feel that power is definitely the reason why people who are in political fields have this authority over all people that are being gentrified. Not only is it a state problem or a nation problem, it's a global problem. It's also happening in Brazil. You know, people are being taken out of their homes for a soccer championship. So it's like these people have a power that's so not visible because it's a spiritual power. You know, it's an underlying spiritual power that a lot of us are not aware of, that a lot of us are not even in tune with because of our education. You know, our education teaches us not to be in tune and so powered by these things. So I think that being in tune and so empowered by these things first needs to come from the education that we receive and being really aware of how we grasp onto the things that we receive, the music that we listen to, the things that we say, the things that we speak. Is it really from us or does it come from this higher power, you know? So I think that this underlying message is really, yes, gentrification exists. Some people are aware, some people aren't aware, but let's not stay focused on the detail. How can we get others to realize that this power is what's keeping us focused on the detail rather than the solution of realizing that this power is what's causing
Can
this
you run
topic.
for office? Yeah, Michael.
Can I say something? I want to throw a question to you guys. Related to this notion of power and the responsibility of who's kind of protecting the culture. I'm interested to know what
what stake in that conversation do arts institutions have? And artists who are indigenous to a specific neighborhood, I mean, it's not necessarily political in nature, but it does seem like the artists who are from Harlem, artists who are from Brooklyn, who Detroit, DC, they are archivers and they are preservers and documentarians, right? And what do those institutions and those artists who have been in a place since the beginning, how can they help to kind of make sure that the shifts aren't as drastic, aren't as jarring, aren't as harmful and detrimental, I think, to a community that wants to make sure its legacy is preserved? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an excellent question, and it really ties together the comments and some of the questions that have been posed here. There really is an interrelationship between all of these issues. But let's take art institutions. The biggest art institution that I think we have here in Harlem is the Harlem Arts Alliance. Everybody knows about Harlem Arts. Institutionally, it certainly has a large budget. It is supported by Columbia University. It meets in the theater weekly at the Riverside Church. It's been that way for a long time. It's headed by Vosa Rivers, and they put on Harlem Week and all of the other stuff that is linked in with corporations who are their sponsors. That's what we were talking about. And I think ultimately the question is whether or not these institutions are independent. And if they are not, then how can they act in the best interest or serve the interest of their constituents as well as the artists themselves? Now, one of the things that I like about the National Black Theater, because we just had a program there, the Federation of Cuban Women, is very international, it's very supportive. It should adjust its prices sometimes. Depending on the program. But seriously, that's another question. I am always amazed and somewhat appalled at the same time if we look at how these boards of these institutions have been revamped. Have you noticed who's on these boards?
Yeah.
They are outside people or bankers in its corporate interests. Or Columbia University. Let me just say a couple of things pretty quickly and about Jeff Canada. The charter school movement here in Harlem, and Harlem can be called the Silicon Valley of charter schools, is financed by hedge funders, the bankers. And for those people, I shouldn't say that, and for our brothers and sisters who are confused, and who say, and admonish us with, why are you people always talking about handouts? You just want our people to be on welfare, always asking for a handout from the government. That's all you people. We've got to pool and get $1 from every black person and we can become the new Black Wall Street. But we all know, of course, that's ridiculous. And in fact, the biggest welfare recipients on the U.S. taxpayers are, in fact, the banks. The Federal Reserve continues to pump $68 billion, not million, billions of dollars a month to prop up the banks on Wall Street. And the austerity program, and somebody talked about this, the austerity program, I think somebody was talking about the global austerity program as well as the national austerity program, which says we've got to cut back on Social Security, we've got to cut back on this, we've got to close the post office. Now, I worked in Harlem for a long time, over 30 years. The post office wasn't just a place where you went to buy stamps. It was where working class people went to do their banking because they don't have a bank account. So they went to the post office. But you can't do that anymore. And now the post offices are going to be located in Staples. So let's just talk, just two things I want to point out because we need to know about this because I really want your eyes to open like saucers. Jeff Canada charter school that is pushed by the Obama administration. There was a kind of what we called in Black Agenda Report a Three Stooges Act of Arnie Duncan, who was Education Secretary, along with Reverend Sharpton, along with right-winger Newt Greenwich. They all went around promoting charter schools. And they did it on behalf of the Barack Obama administration. That's what they did. Because Wall Street is itching to get its hands on this multi-billion-dollar public school financing. That's what they want. We talked about public housing. How many of you are aware that there has been a movement now for the past decade or more to privatize public housing? And when you look at Jeff Canada's school, K through 12, squeezed in like a little Lego building in some little Lego playground that my kids used to build, there is this school just squeezed in on this public space that was once park space and parking space for those residents. Well, we know what's going to happen, and some of you know about the police raid. And I want to talk about how NYPD used the cops to enforce gentrification. But I want to just tell you about this because you need to know about this because of the young people. Now, certainly the rivalry between the gangs in Manhattanville and Grant Public Housing is real. But at the same time, when NYPD on June 5th raided not one, not two, but three of those, shall I stop? No. Okay. Three of those public housing, and one is a building located on Manhattan Avenue. There were 400 cops and flak jackets, assault rifles, helicopters hovering above. The raid was conducted at 6 a.m. in the morning. They knocked down doors. They called women bitches. They put guns in the face of women, children, grandmothers. Woman wasn't allowed to dress. Everybody was caught up in that sweep. 103 arrests. Some had already been arrested previous, including those who were totally innocent. One boy was just up to visit his parents, scheduled to graduate from college. Now he's in jail. The bails range from $75,000 to $1 million, $500,000 to $1 million. Those kids are looking at a jail time of 15 to life. I know that there were some, this is very real, the gratuitous violence that's been going on for 2 or 3 decades, but it's not everybody. And the most important thing to remember about that raid is what runs parallel to those public housing developments is Columbia University's $6 billion expansion. The land grab, as it was described by the Daily News, not me, not the leftists, but the Daily News. The land grab, a private institution that calls itself a civic institution. You think you and I can even sometimes walk through that main campus on 116th Street, and that used to be a public street. We can't do that. So this is Columbia University's Katrina moment. Look what has been given to us. Now, Columbia University, by its own admission, and its environmental impact statement, because they couldn't avoid it, I'm part of a group, Coalition to Preserve Community, that has been in opposition against Columbia University's expansion for the past 10 years. You can go to our website, stopcolumbia.org. But Columbia University poses the biggest threat, not only with the people and the businesses that have already been displaced, but will continue to be displaced, because you know why? Columbia University will develop the extension of their campus over a 30-year period. A 30-year period. Lee Bollinger, who is the president of Columbia University and who is also president of the board of directors of the New York Federal Reserve, that's who he is, says that it may take 50 years. That's half a century. That's how they're thinking. They're thinking about what Harlem is going to look at 50 years. Not just today, not just 10 years from now, but what it's going to look like in 50 years. And that is a Harlem, a central Harlem, and a greater community of Harlem that will be depopulated, this continuous depopulation of its black and brown community. And it's not just Harlem, throughout New York City. Look at Chinatown. Yeah. There is no more Little Italy, if you folks keep up with it. Under the Bloomberg administration, he was able to rezone 1/5 of New York City. He rezoned 125th Street with the approval of slumlord Inez Dickens, the city council person. Just one other thing. And finally, just one other thing. 125th Street, Pathmark Supermarket. About a number of years ago, it was poor people didn't have food security, and we needed a Pathmark Supermarket. Well, Calvin Butts, the Palestinian Development Corporation and the East Harlem Triangle, that both own 51% of the stock in Pathmark, and the city owns 49%. Well, they just sold it to a luxury developer, Extel, for $35 million. Now, let me just include that, but I think it's important that you have this information.
Yeah.